Hey,
Morning, Chris.
hi.
Thanks for joining me today.
No, it's
It's going to be great. We can tell everybody about Tap2Tag. I know all about Tap2Tag. I've been working with you on this for, I don't know, 10 years now, just the 10. But, we want to introduce ourselves. So tell us how we got started, how you got started.
well, it started about 14 years ago with my elderly mother who was changing medications, it seemed like every week. And we always needed to keep a record of where that information was going to be held. Because inevitably paramedics would have to be called at some point. And the first question they ask is, what's the current medication? Now, there were no apps in those days. An 87-year-old woman is not going to have a mobile phone, especially a smart one. The only alternative really was some of those necklaces that you can put the bit of paper in.
Right.
And the problem with those, with ever changing medication, you have to keep rewriting the information. There was no digital solution for it. It also happened to be at a time where I was at an event where somebody was giving a little talk, and he held up a mobile phone and he held up a beer mat. And he took the phone, tapped it against the beer mat, and up came a voucher for some beer. I thought, how does that work? So I had a little sit down with him, and he then informed me all about near field communication, or NFC, and how that was now being built into, at that time, Android phones to facilitate payments using your phone.
Android, always a step ahead, eh?
I know, I think so, and it took Apple a long time, many years, before they actually caught up. So, the whole point about NFC is that it can read something called an RFID chip, and they're in everything these days. You'd be quite surprised where they are. But you can actually program into those chips specific details. And so the idea came to me and of creating a system where we could design certain devices having those chips in that would link to medical records that will be updated and maintained by the patient or the customer.
Brilliant.
I know. But the problem is it took 14 months to develop the version 1 of the whole system, and we launched it, unfortunately, after my mother passed away.
Wow, shame.
Well, it's a good legacy project, I think, to sort of hold on to. Even though after the launch, which was now crumbs 12 years ago, and we have been pushing forward the envelope in this kind of technology for at least 10 times.
Yeah, well, I imagine a lot's changed since you first launched, right? How's the platform evolved? How do you feel the platform's evolved since 2012?
If anybody uses computers, they know that they probably have to update them probably every 3 or 4 years. And so the same goes with software. So the original software that we built the platform on had become redundant about 2 years ago. And so we made the decision to completely rebuild all of the functionality that we had built from that original concept to where we were at just before the legacy issues of the old system were falling. So now the rebuild has gone, well, it's taken again probably 14 months to develop from scratch the whole new platform, but we've built in some amazing and quite exciting new features into the new.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that a bit. What makes Tap2Tag different than the other NFC or QR-based, QR code solutions that are out there? I know that at the forefront is security and privacy, but why don't you give the audience a little insight into that?
Well, particularly with medical, we are very conscious of the different geographic requirements for holding anything relating to medical data, even though what we've done is basically provided a repository for customers to keep their own information within their account. But we have always been leaping ahead. So anybody that has any medical information which relates to them being a Canadian citizen, that sits specifically on Canadian servers. Anything to do with the US sits on US servers, and anything to do with the UK sits on a UK server. And those are, particularly in North America, HIPAA requirements, and they are certainly part of the digital NHS requirements in the UK. Nobody
And
else does that.
GDPR, of course.
GDPR, yeah, absolutely. GDPR is very prevalent in everybody's mind now. Data links all over the place. That's one of the things we've done with the new system, is absolutely ramped up all security on the site. So everything has two-factor authentication now, and access is limited to only those that can see it and are authorized to see that information.
So how do you decide what features to develop next? Apart from what I'm nagging you about, of course. Where do we decide? How do we decide, this is something that everyone should have?
I think initially it's from previous experience. Don't forget, we've been doing this for a long time, and we get asked sometimes silly questions about, and can it do this, and can it do that?
Every day.
But I don't think people are understanding what it can do and why it is already 3 steps ahead of anything else. The next steps really are, I think the medical platform is really robust now, and we have developed things like organizational accounts which allow people like in schools or businesses to maintain the medical information of their employees, but in a controlled manner where the employee chooses what they share with the employer. Or it could be, imagine a room full of school children. Imagine a room full of school children where you've got a child who falls ill in that classroom. Part of the problem with that is, how does that teacher know exactly what the medical condition is of that child?
Right.
Teachers will argue, well, I know all my children, that's fine. However, if you've got a temp teacher in, or there's a change in medication, then those medical forms are completed at the beginning of the year. They're kept in the secretary's office, and if there's a medical problem, then somebody has to go running down to that office. If a child had a key fob, and we've seen that many times with our customers, they give it to their children, they make the schools aware of it, then that information can be shared quite readily.
Right. So then, is that our ideal customer? Who is the ideal Tap2Tag customer?
And this kind of leads on to something else I want to talk about, but anybody with a medical condition should have one of these devices. It provides virtually instant access to a patient's medical profile in the event of an emergency. Accessing that information by paramedics, the quicker they can get that, the better. And the stories I get back from customers, I know you've had the same instances over there.
Absolutely.
Keith is blessed to be living in Canada at the moment. I'm here in sunny Bristol in the UK, but the stories are uniform across all countries. So the benefit I see is that giving first responders that important information so quickly saves lives, and we know it saves lives. The other aspect is that, crumbs, I've lost my train of thought. The other aspect is that it's anybody that has a medical condition, whether it's epilepsy or diabetes or their post-operative care, they all will need to be able to display that information at the most inappropriate and terrifying time for them. At least they know that information's covered.
Yeah, and one of the things that everyone from in my experience is really behind is the fact that once the device is activated, the next of kin or the caregiver is notified that there's been an emergency, and the exact spot is geolocated right on their device. It's that for me was the biggest game changer.
Well, we're enhancing on that even further, and this is big news for you, Keith. So,
okay.
So at the moment, as soon as somebody accesses the full medical data, it's not necessarily when it's tapped, because that would be when people are trialing it out, it will be sending text message hither and thither. But when somebody accesses the full data, it does currently send an automatic text message to the next of kin. What we're going to be doing now is not only will they be getting that text message with the geolocation link, so that the next of kin know exactly where it's happened, the tapper, or the emergency responder, will also have the opportunity of just entering their name, contact number, or even email address, and a short message. It's not compulsory, but at least one form of contact. And the short message could be from the paramedic saying, hey, I've got Joan here at the moment, we're taking her to ABC Hospital. Don't worry, but just to let you know that we're taking her there. Rather than somebody getting a text message, starting to panic, they might then start ringing them.
Having no further information. Yeah, that's great. That's a fabulous enhancement. I mean, you see, these are the kind of things that we realize. I realize is the wrong word that we come to, through trial and error almost.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. Again, that's part of it is listening to people, but I think it's then taking what they think would be really good and then just taking it to the next step. Always trying to be on the cutting edge of everything that's being done.
That's right, leading edge, not the bleeding edge.
Yes,
Correct.
absolutely right.
So speaking of that, how do we get Tap2Tag in front of new users? How are we going to grow this? What's our approach going to be now that we have the new and fabulous platform?
I think we've got an amazing client base already. And I think the next stage is trying to look at those organizations that can see the benefit. So one of the key ones, particularly here in the UK, is the industry which is the second most dangerous is the construction and house building industries.
What's the most dangerous one?
Farming.
Okay, oddly enough. Anyhow, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, that's okay. So we are trying to reach out to all the major house builders here in the UK and construction companies too, to try and encourage them to look at this. Because even to the extent where somebody can just have a sticker on a hard hat, then gives paramedics immediate access to that person's medical information. Now, a lot of these companies may have in-house systems that you're
Right.
relying on somebody to carry an iPad around with them all the time, but it doesn't beat actually having a physical thing that accesses the medical information. So I think it's organisations really, schools, specialist schools. There are plenty of those in the UK. You've got them over there in Canada too.
Of course, of course. And I think one of the things is once it becomes kind of a ubiquitous thing in a specific industry, like-minded individuals in other industries will think, wow, this is something that we need to implement into our way of doing things.
We've had this conversation loads of times, but what we really need is for one of our customers to be Kim Kardashian or somebody equally as famous, and then to have a trip or a fall. I think I've heard it somewhere. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, it's 2025. The person's Chapel Roan. We need to get her to have a Tap2Tag device.
Okay, so whoever that is, I have no idea. You may have guessed, everybody, Keith and I are old. Well,
We're old.
I think I add more to that age. But anyway, I mean, we just need somebody famous to have one of our devices. They stick their heel in the pavement or whatever. I don't know why I'm picking on women, but anyway. And then somebody running along and tapping their device. But we don't want to fool anybody to have any bad instances in life. But
of course,
that's the silly way. The other way is really trying to get word of mouth out there and doing things like this, trying to get people to understand exactly how Tap2Tag works, why it's been a benefit. And I bet anytime you have shown this to anybody, Keith, the first thing they'll say is, wow, that's amazing.
Absolutely. 100% of the time they say, this is great. Why haven't I seen this? How does that work? Every single time.
And it costs money. It's a very expensive game, the advertising game. I mean, we've tried doing some limited TV commercials here in the UK.
Well, speaking of money, from a business perspective, we've had this back and forth for a revenue model. And Chris being, the forward thinker, oddly enough, I'm the technologist, but Chris seems to be more forward thinking when it comes to the way technology is going with the regular people. Chris was the one who said, we at some point we need to go to a subscription model, and I was very much against it. But anyway, tell us why you always thought that was the way to go, and you saw the future in the way things were working.
Because I know how much it costs, Keith. No, the part of the issue is that we are continually innovating and maintaining servers with all this data on, with all the security, all the maintenance that's required, costs money. Storage, we now offer unlimited, within the bounds of reason, storage within medical profiles, so you can upload care plans, or we even had one customer put their last ECG recording within their profile, and that was actually used by the paramedics who couldn't believe
full recording. Excellent.
So that kind of stuff takes time, takes money, and also we are innovating all the time. So that costs money as well. We have a brilliant development team who are sort of pushing the boundaries of programming and coding, and I know that's your bag of tricks to control to look at. But the only way it becomes sustainable is through a subscription base. But our subscription model is, with the very few competitors that are out there, is still the cheapest, most inexpensive model on the planet. And we offer tenfold more in the kind of benefits that our customers have.
Yeah, and I think, if you're gonna have a subscription model, you have to offer the customer something that's worthy of the subscription, and as you said, if you can keep all of your important documents in the cloud for a modest amount, people are going to take advantage of that. And we invite them to. Anyhow, so partnerships and collaborations, though, how are we going to get bigger? What are we going to do?
Again, something like this is great. If you find us, put a note in the comments section if it's something you're interested in. I think initially I was looking at the potential for other distributors around the world, because this is not unique to North America or the UK. There are going to be other people out there that are going to be interested in becoming distributors for us, and that would be brilliant. We need, hopefully, to try and find more trials to do within the UK and even in Canada. And I should say Keith looks after Canada and the USA and Mexico, the Caribbean. He's a busy boy.
Yeah, well, let's talk about our international growth. As you alluded to, we've been collaborating since 2015, I believe.
Yeah.
It's our 10-year anniversary is coming up. And, but from the outset, we've been looking to expand internationally. I know you've made forays into other English-speaking countries, such as Australia, and we've tried India and South Africa. But, it's been a challenge, quite frankly, to have somebody to take, to toot my own horn, to take as much interest as I have in this process. A lot of people look at it and go, wow, this is easy. I can just, throw up a website and people will beat a path to my door. But, as we can attest, it takes a little more effort than just saying this is a great product, which it is. But, you've got to get out there, you've got to beat the bushes, and you have to do a lot of groundwork in order to get this to move forward.
I'll tell you I think it's a funny story. So the day that we launched the website, I sat there until it was probably about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. The site went live, the original one. And I sat there and I thought, this is such a brilliant idea. Orders are going to come pouring in. And I sat there till 3 in the morning and I was looking at the analytics on the site, and we had one visitor who didn't buy it. And it's because me being an accountant, hadn't dedicated enough time to looking at the marketing and how that would be targeted. So I know, Keith, you've got some brilliant insights into advertising marketing.
We talk about the marketing, 10 years in, I felt like you did, Chris. When I saw the product and saw how it worked, I thought there is absolutely no way that anyone who wears a traditional medical alert bracelet will not embrace this technology. And I know, like you said, medical alert, you phone the number, maybe get an operator, maybe their account's expired, but, it's a long and involved process in an emergency.
Yeah.
When somebody's looking at your medic alert bracelet, it's an emergency. And I saw the fact that you could tap this device and it would tell you what's going on and how to treat this person, or I thought that was a no-brainer. It still is. It is a no-brainer. But marketing is key. If people don't know about it, they can't take advantage of it. And for the last 10 years, we've been raising an awareness, and it leads us to our next thing. Technology is evolving fast, right? And how are we going to make sure we stay ahead of the curve? I know we've done a great revamp of our back end and the forward-facing part of the website, but as far as the technology goes, what do you got up your sleeve to keep us ahead?
I think we need a partner within the NHS in the UK, and probably in Canada with some of the organisations that hold that key medical information.
Sure. We've been speaking with, provinces here, New Brunswick, Manitoba, among others. And do you think a kind of partnership would be key to this?
I think to take it to the next level, there are two elements to this. One is looking at organisations that already have a digital solution. So the NHS has been since the pandemic has been very good at trying to get their NHS app and the GP data under one umbrella. Hospitals, they're still using Windows 95 for a lot of their systems, and all the British hold as a national treasure the NHS. We only wanted to see it do well. But with certain information with certain information where it's already stored digitally, the next logical step is to look at developing APIs between a patient's NHS data, or as you've coined the term, data, or clean data. Sorry, clean data.
Clean data.
Yeah, which is maintained by medical professionals, and incorporating that into the profiles as well. Where there are places that don't have a digital solution, we've kind of developed that. And in fact, the NHS, again, using that example of where hospital systems don't incorporate with anything these days, but we can always develop an API with any system out there. So we could be, it's a pipe dream, but we could be that fulcrum for all of that data in the UK.
I think that's our secret sauce. We can be the hub, at the middle of the wheel where all the spokes connect. We're data type agnostic. We can, like you said, just an API, secured how you like. Our data secure. If your data is secure, we have no issues going back and forth. And also the way I don't know, I can't remember if we actually designed it this way on purpose or not, but our stuff standing discreetly and securely allows other people to display their information within our system, but never the data shall mingle. We never have access to it or looking at what, belongs to the end user on, from our side or from their external vendor. So none of that, crosses paths or gets intermingled or is available to anyone on the traditional internet. Having this closed system was something that was way ahead of its time. Now people are getting into these curated spaces as AI goes across the internet and scrapes all kinds of stuff. But it's not quite available through our Tap2Tag website due to our security protocols.
Absolutely right. It's I think we always said we were a little bit ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
The introduction of having a beer mat and a phone to produce it. You love that story, don't you? That's a great story. To be able to produce a voucher is pretty incredible. But again, the pandemic came along, and although we saw QR codes as sort of old technology, suddenly it came to the fore. Everybody knew what to do with a QR code. So that's why every single one of our devices now has NFC capable, QR code capable, even to the extent that every code that is used to access that information, it's not an insecure code, it's one that people do need to access the data, is printed on every single one of our devices.
Isn't that funny? We had NFC before QR codes, and the QR code is the older technology, and nobody was interested until the pandemic. So, these things, sometimes innovation's fueled by outside circumstances, right? Yeah. And it's a constant balancing act, right? You have to, how do you manage to stay true to your vision, the original vision of Tap2Tag amidst all the changes and all the pushback we get where people are saying, if it can only do this one more thing, we could make it huge, but we need you to make this one little tweak.
So my argument, and I know yours has been as well, is okay, if you pay us a little bit of money, we can do that. And then everybody goes scurrying off into the distance. I think with the new platform and where we're at with it, the opportunity to make small changes is available. So we did a big pivot. We're in the sort of final stages of our sprint development, which finishes this month. If anybody's looking for the products, and it's now August, I should say, 2025. So by the end of this month, the store will be open. You'll be able to buy the devices again. But we're looking ahead now to the next sprint, the next 3-month sprint, which will be September through to the end of November. And we're already starting to plan some new and bigger things. But part of the current sprint process is when we were looking at construction and house building, somebody did mention to me, said, wouldn't it be a good idea if you could store documents within the profile that were relevant to their particular trades. And because we were looking at potentially construction and house building,
So certifications and qualifications.
absolutely anything from a forklift driver's license to a working from height certificate or a union membership card or whatever it was. Because I don't know what it's like for you over there, Keith, but in the UK, the health and safety executive will do periodic and
Spot checks, just kind of a random drop by the site and make sure everyone's certified.
absolutely. And so normally everything's fine because it's basically the site manager will keep everything in their porter cabin or whatever. But there's always going to be an instance where somebody is caught driving a forklift and they haven't got their particular license or certification to hand. But that's the biggest area of fatalities in construction is falls from height.
Okay.
It's a very important thing to make sure that you have all the correct certification. So now that can all be stored within there. And we were able to pivot very quickly with that requirement, and it probably took about 4 or 5 days to build into the module.
Yeah. That was great. The team has been amazing through this. You know, it's been 14 months, but if anyone could see where we were and where we are now, the difference is light years. 14 months to go, you know, 1 light year. Let's put it that way. So, you know what? Do you have any? If somebody was getting into our space, would you have any advice for them besides join up with us and let's make it great for everyone? What were the pitfalls that you could say? Listen, if you need to get involved with saving lives and helping people on a regular basis, what are the hard parts?
Train to be a paramedic or a doctor. I think if you're trying to get it, again, we've seen the curve over the last 10, 12 years. We were definitely the first to create a digital space for maintaining records that is controlled by the patient. We have seen so many other people try to copy it. They have risen with big fanfares, and they were probably very good at their marketing, but they weren't necessarily very good at their financial model.
Yeah, some of them were exactly the same as how, you know, we're laid out, right down to the way that some of our other devices, you know, are marketed. It was exactly the same. Anyway, sorry. Now we're talking about things that we commiserate over, over a beer or two.
I think you're right. I mean, those companies, they came, they saw, they went, and now there are maybe 1 or 2 still hanging around in the world that are trying to do the same thing. But we are so far ahead in the functionality of this system over theirs, and there's nobody else using using RFID chips and NFC to access the information. And you might argue, well, okay, so why is that a big thing? Well, we think it is because it is secure. Then if it's just QR codes, does it do the texting? Does it send the geolocation? Does it do probably 10 different things which taken together make our system light years ahead?
Absolutely. So that being said, what's next? What's upcoming?
Well,
what do we have up our sleeve?
I'd have to check because I am so befuddled with everything that's going on sometimes. Mm-hmm. And as I said, we're old. So I've got it written down. What else are we doing? So we're doing this. I think this is important. You know, we are peeking behind the curtain of what it's like to be an innovator, to try and push something forward, and it's been difficult. It's been financially hard, emotionally hard as well. But the thing that kind of keeps me going is all of those stories that we hear from customers about how it has changed their life. I mean, I did a little story the other day about the girl on the train, and we'll try and put a link in the comments below. But that was inspirational. It's one of those things where somebody had diagnosed with epilepsy quite late in life, early 20s, and suddenly her whole world contracted into living at home with her parents, couldn't go out, had no confidence. The words she used is that this little bracelet changed my life, and I suddenly felt able to do all the things that I could do before because I knew all that information was around. So that's the kind of thing that keeps me going on this journey. Mm-hmm. What I would dearly like now is to see some partnerships with some other organisations where I think we know that we can see the benefit. Convincing is the wrong word, but just being able to explain all the positive elements about it that could be of benefit to that organisation.
Right.
So for me, and I've had some good support from my local MP, we are potentially looking at trying to get this to the British Army, even to the extent because of the security and the accessibility of the information. It's a system that could benefit an organization like that in a very, very secure fashion. And I know you've been having discussions with one of the armed forces in the world. But
I have to keep that under our hat still,
I
but
know, yes, and that's why I was very, very careful. But it's not Canada, and it's not the U.S. Army. Although the U.S. Army, yeah, organisations like that, and it would just be great if we could do a trial either within the NHS or with any other organisation. If there's anybody out there that think this could be a benefit to them, come and talk to us and let's see if we can get a trial together.
absolutely. Chris, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thanks for coming on and sharing our story. Right? We're both excited to see where the Tap2Tag ends up, but I'm sure anyone who sees this will keep us in back of mind and want to see how we end up as well.
Don't forget, it's life-saving information on tap.
On top. There you go. Have a great one, Chris. We're talking.